Hi everyone, welcome back after lunch. I know I'm competing with a post-lunch snooze out on the patio, but hopefully I'll be able to make this interesting enough to maybe you'll do that after this presentation, I don't know. My name's John Townsend, I'm the Chief Information Officer for the National Trust. There's a couple of people in the room I know. It's good to see you all again, and great to be here today. I'm hoping, there we go. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our ongoing digital transformation, and what I mean by that is that yes, we in the Trust, and hopefully this will come out during the presentation, have taken a lot of steps towards our digital transformation, but we've got a heck of a long way to go, and most of that is around the inward facing stuff rather than the outward facing stuff, because obviously the more visible stuff tends to get noticed by outside people. Does anyone not know what the National Trust is? That's a good sign. A lot of people think we're a bank, particularly Russian cyber criminals seem to think we're a bank. We're not. We're the biggest conservation charity in the world, and we look after lots of things, which I'm going to talk through briefly here. But we fund those through memberships, donations, legacies, and our commercial operations. We are founded by these three really cool Victorians, and our mission hasn't changed since we were founded back in 1895. It's all about looking after nature, looking after fantastic historic places, but importantly, giving everybody access to those, regardless of whether you're a member or not. And that's what we're all about. We're purely UK based, although we do some work with colleagues in the United States and places around the world. That's what we do. We've look after about 250,000 hectares of land, about 1,100 kilometres of coastline. It's a World Heritage Site. It's about 350 major visitor properties. I'm not quite sure what's happened with the font there. But as you can see, we've got lots of stuff. Importantly, we look after 60 pubs as well, and I can vouch for each and every one of those. We have over 5 million members. We're approaching 5.2 million members. Between 21 and 25 million paying visitors each year, and somewhere around 200 million non-paying visitors. And the reason we say that is because we've got no idea, because we don't count them. These are people who can just go and enjoy the coast, for example. But we do have between 60 and 75,000 volunteers helping us out. Everyone is welcome to come and have a go at that if you like. But we also have between 10 and 15,000, depending on seasonal fluctuations, staff as well. So, all in all, we're quite a big organisation, but we're a diverse organisation. We do everything from retail outlets to catering, to visitor attraction, to historical conservation, to managing farms, just about everything. And we have to make sure we do that in a way that engages with people. And everything that we do, whether we are talking about, the first visit from a school child to one of our properties, is all about engaging that individual, and we've taken that mantra into our digital proposition as well. Okay, why do we have to do this? Technology, as you all know in this room, has a half-life, and it will decline at a steady state if left untouched. And some of that, particularly in the digital sphere where it's public facing, the decline is a lot more noticeable and a lot more abrupt. And we found, to be honest, going back about 4 years ago, our digital offering was pretty shameful, to be honest with you. It was, it had a website that most of the links didn't work. They'd been left broken for a long time. We had a proliferation of sites that, quite frankly, we had no idea where they were or who was looking after them. In some cases, nobody was. And it was causing us all sorts of problems, both from an image perspective, from a brand and marketing perspective, but also from a security perspective, and making sure that we could look after all of the information that people wanted to share with us. So we knew we had to do something about it. And from my board's perspective, that was all about signing up to continuous improvement so that we could stay, as a minimum, at the good level. Now, we're not a Google, that's not the type of thing that we do as an organisation. We're a conservation charity, so we don't necessarily need to be on the leading edge in all the technology activities. However, where we choose to be, and we think that's right for our organisation, then we will be. In order for us to have a truly digital experience for our supporters, and by that I mean, for our volunteers, visitors, etc., we had to do some pretty fundamental things. So the first thing was about building a fantastic digital platform as a basis for all of this activity. But then we had to do a lot of the enabling activity, and a lot of that is really boring stuff that boards hate investing in. It's things like, networks. We have, I mentioned before, we've got 350 major visitor sites. Now, most of those inconveniently weren't built in the centre of London, and people put them out in the countryside and places like that. And some of them are an absolute nightmare to get networked to. So we had a situation where we were running, 350, 400,000 people per year visitor attractions, and they were operating on a 0.5 meg ADSL link. Now, if you tell me that's going to be a great user experience, nobody would want to run a phone on that nowadays. Yeah, so some real fundamental problems. But, we've decided to invest in that, and we're rolling out fibre optic connectivity to all of our major properties across the country. Yeah, which is a huge piece of work for us, working with BT and BT Openreach. Also migrating out of legacy data centres. Again, you can't just look at the new shiny stuff. You have to think about all the stuff that's been locked away in a cupboard or in an old data centre for a long time. We had to tackle that, and we migrated out of 2 data centres with some 750 hosts that had quite frankly been left to rot in there for years and years on old technologies that even if you Googled them, you'd be lucky to find out what they actually were, let alone replace them. So there was huge work to do in terms of those sort of hygiene factors, but also what it did do is enable us to start thinking about the future. So when we were thinking about how can we use the Internet of Things to help with our conservation mission, how can we think about replacing enterprise applications to give our end users inside the trust a much more user-centric digital experience, which quite frankly they don't have today in many ways. Has it all been straightforward? No. We had to do some serious rework and relearning. So when we first set down let's build a new website, and that's literally what it was. Unfortunately, people who were trying to build that website had been within the organisation for quite some time. We were looking to build it in the same way that perhaps they built the previous one 10 years earlier. And it was a completely different proposition about how people wanted to interact with this type of technology. And so, quite frankly, we got about a year into that, and they had to put the train back on the rails and restart it. Yeah. So it's not, it absolutely hasn't been straightforward for us. We don't necessarily speak the same language in the technology world as we do, in many other parts of the business as well. So when we talk about things like risk to delivery, my organisation tends to think about things like this, which is Clarendon Park, one of our major properties that burnt down about 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago. So this is the type of issue that we're talking about. If we're saying, there's a risk to whether we'll get this digital platform launched or not, they don't really understand it. So we have to be able to communicate in terms that the rest of the organisation understands. Embedding agile is one of those areas. So great, lots of new buzz phrases, minimal viable products and all of this type of thing, but actually get the organisation to understand it. As I said previously, the language thing is a real barrier to us sometimes. And if we're truly going to get business to take ownership of these types of delivery, they have to be talking in that language. And that's what we've managed to do. When I've got one of my conservation directors who, deals in artworks that are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and he starts talking about the minimal viable product for the collections management system, I think, we're getting there. We're making progress, but it hasn't been straightforward. But this idea of embedding agile in everything that we do, and really understanding what stable teams and what continuous delivery actually looks like has been a real challenge for the organisation. But it's enabled us to do great things. Our web platform has won lots of awards because, quite frankly, we've got loads of great pictures of good things that people like to look at. So, but it's enabled us to deliver products that allow people to engage with our cause, whether that's about joining the trust, whether that's about donating to the trust, it gives them that sense that it's a window into what we're doing. I had the lead for AWS, the global lead for AWS, she came over to see what we're doing and said, I just want to jump into your website. And that's the type of user experience that we're trying to create, that people feel like it's a portal, it's a window into the organisation. Has it been a success? Well, the numbers start to speak to themselves. I mean, for us, delivering a 21% year-on-year growth in people actually accessing the digital platforms from an external supporter perspective, that's really good. You know, we'd aimed at a 10% growth, so whether we were aiming way too low, but remember, you know, our engagement is all about a precursor to them engaging physically at properties and coming and visiting and experiencing that. So huge success from that side. Things like holidays, so we launched a new holidays platform and we actually ran out of holiday cottages to rent within the first couple of months because the conversion rates to actually coming from unique visits to bookings went up by 40% or 41%. So, you know, for our organisation, that meant all of a sudden we've got a strategic problem that people want to come and book holidays, but they can't. And so therefore we have to reprioritise, do we use vernacular buildings now for holiday cottages that perhaps were out of use previously? But it gives people that, you know, that opportunity to really want to engage with us again. When we look at specific appeals, you know, the White Cliffs appeal that we launched just, you know, at the back end of last year was a huge success for us. It was specifically about preserving a piece of land in and around the White Cliffs to enable people to gain access to them and also to conserve some of the unique nature there. And we were able to use the digital platform to do that, and it was a huge, huge success for us, and we wouldn't have been able to do that previously. For people actually joining the trust, again, you know, we are seeing conversion rates from first inquiry to actually joining in the region of 25% conversion rates, which is, you know, is pretty good from somebody saying, oh, I think I might go on this website and look at the join bit. Yeah, to see that now almost 50% of our memberships are managed online. Now, from GDPR perspective, that's a huge benefit for us because it means all of our new memberships that go through the contact preferences and permissioning that, you know, we wouldn't have been able to do had we been reliant on the face-to-face recruitment. But the watchword I'd say in all this is that we focus and people can use and abuse the idea of digital through agile delivery in a way that lets it run out of control. Now, we as an organisation, like many others, you know, we've been around for 120 odd years, we've got a lot of old IT, and we have to be able to integrate digital services with that legacy infrastructure, and therefore using the disciplines of enterprise architecture to understand what launching these new business propositions means is still really, really important for us. So we maintain that level of discipline to make sure that what's happening in the digital space doesn't get out of kilter with what we need to do in the legacy space as well. We've also, I was listening to a really interesting talk about 50 shades of data before, and for us, that ability to drive user insights and understand what our users want through all of their interactions on the website and all the physical interactions, and to be able to manage those and understand them across platforms through our data analytics team it's been hugely important, and that enables us then to provide the evidence to say where do we want to take the evolution of the digital platform or our other technology investments next, because we've got, you know, real hard facts that we're able to exploit. We put in place continuous delivery. So when we first launched the website, it was agile meets waterfall, to be honest. You know, we were sort of dressed it up a little bit in how we continuously manage those product lines, but now we've gone to a fully embedded, stable team that uses a continuous delivery model. That means that we're able to do releases on, you know, a daily basis, if not faster, which for us, you know, means that we can get those changes, get those improvements, enhancements, using, you know, user feedback all the time to continuously evolve our products. So it's a good model and it works for us. And what it importantly means is that people building the thing do so in a way that they know they're going to be looking after it indefinitely, and therefore it's in their interest to get it right first time. Talking about those people though, we did find that when we set out on this journey, a lot of our skill sets in the organisation were somewhat out of date for this way of working. And so we had to do a couple of things: bring in new people who really understood this different way of approaching delivery of technology in support of our organisation, versus training and evolving people's skills in-house. Because we had a lot of good people, and by investing in training technology, a new training platform for them, and basically offering them any course that they wanted to do on that platform, and we have an uptake rate of about 15 courses per person in the organisation within the technology area, and so most of those are done people doing that in their own time as well. So it's been huge because we get the benefit. Yes, they get the benefit because they feel invested in and they get that future career development, but we get the immediate payback because we've got people with enhanced skills working for the organisation. It's also started to change the way that we work as an organisation as well. So we used to be an organisation where you went to work, your desktop was there was a cable that plugged into, and that was it, and then you went home. More and more of our workers now are more mobile, whether they be rangers out and about doing conservation work, or whether they just be people in any day-to-day roles. And so we have to evolve our technology posture so that we can secure that. So we launch more and more internal digital products, and where does the boundary of our organisation stop? And that's been a real transition for us, and we have been playing catch up with that. But the use of some of these technologies and some of these standards, just simple things like cyber essentials and getting the basic hygiene factors right has really enabled us to do that. No presentation this week is going to be complete without reference to GDPR, but this has been a real catch-up for us during the last 6 months. I talked about consolidation of websites, so when websites are just out there because somebody's bought some, a bit of time on Rackspace or whatever and set up a website for us, and it's collecting personal data. Now, previously, that sort of behaviour went on in most organisations, but obviously this brings a different lens onto that, and so we've been playing a lot of catch-up in closing those sites down, making sure all the right security controls and processing arrangements are in place. But that proliferation of the marketing department just be able to flash the credit card and go and buy a new service, has caused us a lot of issues with our digital journey, but also then risk from a GDPR perspective that we've had to close down over the last few months. Bit of a canter through, but we've left some time at the end for questions. Anyone wants to, anything that people want to talk about? One at the front. Sorry.
What's the staff turnover like in technology at the beginning of this journey, so in the first year?
Yeah, it was actually really slow at the beginning of it, but we did then go through a large increase in the number of day rate contract staff that we brought in, and at one point we hit around about 40% day rate contract staff. We did lose some of our internal development team that had been there for quite some time, but they were, shall we say, less focused on wanting to adapt to new ways of working, and so perhaps we're a little bit stuck in the ways, and it just meant that it was the right thing for both sides to do, to move on and do other things, and for us to be able to recruit them. One thing, I mean, there is the age-old challenges of with the dev community, a lot of it being contract-based, because that's the way they like it, but also because it allows people to refresh their skills. And so I actually actively encourage people to rotate through and to go and work in other organisations and then come back to us. Yeah.
Quick one for me, John. You mentioned the 60,000 volunteers.
Yeah.
I'm assuming spanning many generations.
Oh yes.
Poignant problem for me too. Have you taken those guys on this sort of journey to digitisation?
Yeah, so unfortunately they don't span many generations, they're all in one. I went to talk to some of our volunteers. Our volunteers are very territorial, most of them, and they really have a sense of belonging normally with a particular place. And you know, within that they have a group of them, and they do fantastic work. They really do. But I had a conversation with this. It was a couple, and they were both, shall we say, the other side of 70. I'm not quite sure how far the other side. And the completely contrasting views about technology. One of them absolutely refused to use the My Volunteering system that we provide out to all of our volunteers. So they access it via a web portal, off you go, plan your rotas, do all of this, claim your expenses, brilliant. Wouldn't go near it, absolutely refused. The other one she said, I never go anywhere without my iPad, yeah? And I do everything on it, do all banking and everything, and her view was that miserable sod can do what he wants, and I'd replace him with this any day of the week, you know? So the contrasting views at whatever generation, it can be a challenge, particularly because the volunteering arrangement is different, way different to an employee arrangement. And so you don't necessarily have that same level of control that perhaps you would like from an IT perspective. But what we try and do is discourage the bad behaviour where people have been operating like that for years, and they'll be wanting to email information out to everybody rather than going through a web portal, for example. But I'd say by and large they're coming on the journey with us, but some of them are kicking and screaming all the way. Yeah. There's another one. Yeah.
You talked about moving to the agile method, which is quite normal for technology teams.
Yeah.
There's a lot of examples you could show people. But then you talked about non-tech people using the terminology. And I find that a lot more challenging. You get right away, well, we're not the technology department, or we don't want such orthodoxy when they hear, Agile Manifesto and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how did you bridge that gap?
So firstly, I banned the concept of an agile evangelist. The sort of guy standing on the soapbox talking about T-shaped people and all of these sort of wonderful phrases that exclude everybody else. And we turned it into language that people could understand. And we say, well, starting with things like, don't tell us what technology you need, just tell us what is the simple thing you're trying to achieve. And then we'll work with you, break it down and say, how can you own that thing and us support you and enable you to deliver it? But we'll deliver it, a very small thing first, get it to market quick to help you, so you're not waiting for 6 years in some cases for us to deliver you the wrong thing. We'll actually get you something quickly, and then we'll do it in a way that you can build upon it. And actually then changing the dynamic and saying, you own this, not us. So don't, this is not an IT doing it to you, it's you, working with us collaboratively. We also had this situation, and we've still got it to a degree, so so this is a journey for us, it's not something that we've arrived at, where people still view, there's this talk about the business and IT, yeah, and somewhere in between there are people that do specific roles like IT business partners and the business relationship management people who sort of somehow perform that glue to join the two together. And what I'm trying to do the is say no, we're actually two, as far as we can, overlapping circles that those people sit in the intersection, yes, and help pull us together, but we're seen as one. And there was somebody earlier mentioned that they changed the name of IT and they call it Empower or Enable or something. And I thought, well, actually, it is little things like that that make a difference, because otherwise, there is a danger that you're seen as being this separate thing, the sort of spotty guys in the corner that nobody wants to talk to until their laptop stops working. And that is not going to deliver agile ways of working for you. So yeah, it is just changing the conversation.
So it's called Empowered.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the best things we did.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, it's simple, but genius. Yeah.
A discussion away from IT.
Yeah.
That's the point, to get rid of the IT.
Yeah. I like it. I'm going to steal it and use it something different, I think.
I was going to ask you what your biggest learning has been as you've gone through this journey to Agile and on to DevOps.
Yeah, so the biggest learning was I came into the organisation a bit after, it was about a year after they tried to do it. So I was fortunate that I wasn't sat on the train, you know, as it came off the thing, was actually that what people were doing was delivering waterfall projects and using agile terminology. And, you know, they were calling things sprints and they were saying they had a prioritised backlog, just that everything was the same priority and it was actually everything. And, you know, there was no discipline around retrospectives and, you know, all of these things that, you know, if you're going to live and breathe agile, you have to do. And this concept of business owners, you know, as a product owner, you are, you know, you're not just the sponsor of something IT is going to go away and do. And all of those things, you know, and people were organisationally, because we have a very, you know, tight governance regime around what we do for good reasons. You know, we're a conservation charity at the end of the day, and therefore we have certain milestones, which is a waterfall model. And people hadn't really thought about, well, how does Agile fit into that construct where you have to report out in a milestone way to a project management framework that's very akin to, you know, to waterfall sort of Prince 2 type frameworks. So we didn't have quite the freedom to just, you know, we weren't an online startup that could just go and do what it wanted. We had to bring the rest of the organisation with us. And so I'd say the biggest learning was actually recognising that this wasn't just a thing that IT did in isolation, and that just calling something agile doesn't make it agile. Yeah. I think that's the shut up sign, is it? Thanks everyone. Thank you.